Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Yes, that is the sigh of someone that has been at the North London derby and watched Spurs lose. Many of you no doubt have been sighing, screaming, shouting, muttering, murmuring, whatever you do to dissect and deal with a defeat like that. Very frustrating game on so many levels. And yeah, not good at all. Not good at all. Gives us plenty to dive into in and around it. I did think there was a certain dose of irony to the fact that on the day that Spurs very quietly confirmed that ENIC have increased ever so marginally their grip on the club, a North London derby came along and showed exactly what the gap is right now between the two sides, and also pretty much how much more ENIC and the club, whoever you want to classify it as, should have done in this transfer window to help, especially this transfer window, to help Spurs and Ange Postecoglou on the pitch. This was just a game that showed that for me. How in the world we have got to, what am I recording this on January the 16th, and not one outfield player has come to help that absolutely battered and knackered squad is beyond me. Whether you want to lay the fault at the ENIC's door, Daniel Levy's door, the board's door, the club's door, Johan Langer's door, I don't know. But quite frankly, it is ridiculous that we're in a situation where more than 2 weeks into a window, nothing has been done about that set of outfield options that he's overusing the same amount of people for. But on the ENIC extra little bit of control they've got, I normally do check Company's House, but actually it was someone on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, that actually flagged it up to me. I hadn't checked in a couple of weeks or so, and just lo and behold, I think some people get email announcements or updates on these things. Lo and behold, on Company's House yesterday, it appeared that a £11.7 million statement of capital was raised by the allotment of shares. So I kind of dug a little bit deeper into trying to find out exactly what that meant. Obviously, thoughts immediately go back to, you might remember the 150 million that was ENIC were offering up if Spurs needed it after COVID and all that sort of stuff. And Spurs took, I looked up, I think it actually ended up being 111 million, I think. I could be wrong. It might be just 100 million, but it certainly, I remember the shares, I think, amounted to 111. But anyway, kind of wondered, is that more of that? Whatever it is, I found on the Spurs website, buried, I must say, absolutely buried, not in a news update, not anything like that. You had to go, follow this journey if you like, if it really interests you that much. Go into the investor relations section on the website, then go under shareholder information, and if you scroll down a bit, there's an explanation of what's happened. So it states in it that ENIC have, like I say, ever so slightly increased their control of the club to an 86.91% share, which is up from 86.58% that it was, in order to, this is the quote marks, to reflect shares allotted in December 2024 in respect of operational expansion. I think, I could be wrong, but I think it said in the document on Company's House December 31st, I think. So that's a very small knock-up, 0.33%. If you're wondering about exactly what makes up ENIC's share of the ownership, you might well not, but you might well be. So 70.12% of their share of the club is owned by a trust of which Joe Lewis's family are beneficiaries of. Then the other 29.88% of ENIC's share is, I hate the terminology of this, but I've got to say it right. Chairman Daniel Levy and his family are potential beneficiaries of discretionary trusts which own that 29.88% of the share capital. You think you could just say Daniel Levy and family, but it's not. It's technically, the correct term is trusts where they can benefit from it. But either way, that explains the ENIC, chunk of the club, which is now 86.91% share of the club. Some more cynical than I have suggested that perhaps having more of the club allows you to, it's easier to sell it. I don't know how much 0.33% makes, but It also appears that £11.7 million of capital has been raised by this. Almost, I guess, what it's costing them, or has cost them, to buy Antonin Kinski. Again, not saying that that's what that's for. I don't know. I generally don't know. But it's just the irony that on the day that kind of showed that they need to be doing more right now, some will say over the course of time as well, that this has come out, and it was clearly never actually going to be announced. It was just kind of publicly to Company's House, and it's there for all to see. Just on the day when this divide was so kind of apparent between Enoch Spurs and Stan Kroenke's Arsenal, I guess. I know Arsenal fans have had their kind of ups and downs with the Kroenke family, all this sort of stuff as well. But right now, 19 points between the two clubs in the Premier League, and just a huge divide in squad options. I know Arsenal had an 18-year-old playing as well, who played well, but Spurs essentially were relying, not having an 18-year-old in with a team of senior players. They had two 18-year-olds who were their best players last night in the derby, and it should not be the case that they have to be put in that position to be that way. But there's a whole other stuff to that as well. With Postecoglou, from what I understand right now, the situation is that he retains the full backing of those within the club, and there is an understanding of the situation we've spoken about for a million weeks now, it feels like, with the ridiculous amount of injuries, the fact that he has one fit centre-back and no fit left-backs, various players that are just absolutely running on fumes right now. And from what I understand, Spurs are trying to build a structure around him with people to ensure that once he gets through what they see as this rocky stage right now with the injuries, that he will be able to compete for trophies. Of course, that should entail helping him in the transfer market, because let's be honest, so much damage has been done already by not moving for outfield players in this transfer window. I did a piece on this earlier in my talking points, and aggregators took the 2 lines about the stuff I've just said about him having the backing and trying to build the structure. And oh my goodness, it's like, this is the thing, unfortunately, with, I'm sure aggregators do some good stuff, but also when they take 2 lines towards the end of an article and everything else in the article is kind of then not there for any kind of context or anything, my goodness, the amount of angry replies I was getting tagged in. Like, A, I had made any of those decisions, and B, that he's like, oh, he's been told to say this and all this sort of stuff. Please read the rest of the article. Please read the rest of the article. If that's what you think after reading the article, I'd probably be quite surprised. But anyway, my little once in a while aggregator rant. It's just, I just love it when they share or take little bits out of journalist articles. Just shove the article underneath. It just doesn't have to be in it. It can be a reply. Just give people the option to be able to see the context it's within. It's, I'm not moaning about like people not like views and reads or any of that sort of malarkey. It's just the responses I get from people that have clearly not seen the article. Sorry, journalist rant. It's a view shared by all journalists. I'm probably painting that very widely, aren't I? But certainly all the journalists I know. So there you go. So that's Postecoglou's status right now. I know that's not going to make everyone happy. I know there's some people that have decided that no more Ange, and some people that will make happy. Obviously, that is right now. He doesn't mean he doesn't have to turn the results around, because he absolutely does. There's only so long you can kind of keep in this kind of downward turn in certainly in the Premier League results, which we'll talk about. But certainly they're trying. I say that they've got his. It's really difficult, isn't it? Because you want to say that he's got the backing, but then the backing must also involve backing in the transfer window. And yeah, I mean, how many times have we heard Postecoglou say over the last month or so this same phrase, but in different forms? The players need help. We need to get them some help. They're doing everything they can, but they need help. Then there's a key word there. Help! Please help! I think that goes for all of us right now. But yeah, I mean, look, Spurs did move quickly to make a signing, and that was Antonin Kinski. And while the 21-year-old is going to be a big player for the future and also a very talented young player now, again, another person we're going to talk about as this goes on, that speed needed to be shown to bring in another centre-back. That speed needed to be shown to bring in another attacker, which is clearly something that Postecoglou has been prioritising, because Kinski is another young player for the future. It now means that if you take Dominic Solanke aside, who is a terrific signing for the Now, he looked knackered yesterday, but overall has been a terrific signing so far for Spurs. You take him out of that, the average age of the 5 signings Spurs have made for Postecoglou this season is 18.8 years old, which is just mad. You know, to be in the 18-year age range as your kind of, here you go, what's that? You want to win trophies in your second season like you normally do? There's a bunch of teenagers. Again, the more cynical might well say that, look, are they more investments than signings? Are they, players that he's going to have to do a hell of a lot of work with? Again, I will always go back to the fact, and it's something Postecoglou says, there is no way on earth you would turn down signing Archie Gray and Lucas Berval. Just look at what they did yesterday. Look at what they've been doing. They're going to be incredible. And again, another topic. I'm sorry if I keep saying, and we're going to talk about them, because I feel like I'm going on to stuff and then I'm going to talk about it later as well, in probably a bit more depth than theirs. But there's so many young players that have been brought in. He probably feels like a sixth form teacher right now, Postecoglou, more than a manager. I know he's owned the signings of the youngsters. He kind of said that's what he wants. But look, while there's no doubting the ability of some of these players like Lucas Bergvall and Archie Gray to contribute right now, how in the world is he meant to realise his immediate dreams with kind of future promises and potential? It's, some might say, something that we've heard too many times over the years, buying potential rather than ready-made. And look, like I said, great job done with Solanke, but why did that have to be the only one? And this is something we said at the time, needs more ready-made players. This is no rewriting history or anything like that. Great to sign the young players, but get some additional ready-made help in there as well, because that nurtures the young players as well, to have players alongside them. You can see I'm a bit annoyed about all of this. When I start getting out of breath because I'm ranting, that's because it's annoyed me. But yeah, I mean, the players need help, like you said, absolutely. You can see that out there. Last night at the Emirates, the 2 players that Postecoglou turns to for, the running of the team, the creativity of the team, some of the goal scoring of the team right now, Dejan Kulusevski and Dominic Solanke, both of them were shattered. And we're seeing this every so often. There's a game where they just look knackered. And then they kind of have a little, maybe an extra day's rest or something, they look better in the next one. And then the next one are tired again. And it's like, it's because they need to be rotated. They need to have other players that come in. Solanke probably, while no player doesn't want to play a match, he probably saw Richarlison coming back to training and just like, yes, finally. I'm actually going to be able to come off in games sometimes, rather than trying to press at a mad speed in the 94th minute. And Kulusevski, I've never seen Kulusevski look as weak and ineffective as he did yesterday. And that's saying something, because he's brilliant. He's one of my favourite players, and he has been incredible for much of this season. But he is being run into the ground. And yes, they need help, but Postecoglou's now at a situation where he needs help. He's continuing to have to use Archie Gray as a central defender. He's a central midfielder. We just know he is. He has never really played as a centre-back other than back at school. That was the last time he properly played as centre-back before this season with Spurs. We're asking teenagers to act or do what they did in school. That sounds weird, made no sense, but hopefully you know what I mean. He's being overplayed. He's playing alongside Radu Dragusin, who is the only fit centre-back, and is being overplayed. Just because there's simply no one else to play there. Archie Gray played 2 hours against Tamworth. Radu Dragusin played 90 minutes. And here they are, a couple of days later, playing in a North London derby and being expected to be at their best. It's just mad. It's a wonder they haven't broken already. I know we had Dragusin had a bit of an ankle injury, but he still played the next game. I am shocked that we haven't had one of them get injured already, because it's like almost like Spurs are. I'd hope not, but it's almost like they're thinking, oh, they'll be fine. They'll get us through until we get someone back from injury. Ben Davies will be back to help us soon. And it's just, it's utter madness because, Christian Romero and Mickey van der Ven, they got injured on December the 8th. That was the Chelsea game. Ben Davies was 3 days beforehand. He got injured. So that was, a month and 8 days ago. So Spurs knew what they needed to do. They needed to spring into action quickly in this window, but they didn't. And like I said, whether that is the fault of Johan Langer in not delivering players, whether that is the fault of Levy, the board, the club, for not pushing out a little bit of extra money to sign someone that a club doesn't want to lose this month, or whether, like I say, it is just the market. But it's been a glaring problem that's been needed to fix for more than a month and nothing's happened. And the fact that they needed someone early in the window, and now it's going to be the 17th tomorrow, third week of the month, there is probably, this is just me assuming, that there will be a growing realisation that with the injured players on their way back, in varying stages, any newcomer is very quickly now going to become surplus to requirements. And probably newcomers know that. But if you could get someone in earlier on to say, look, you're absolutely going to play for at least the next month, and then if you do well enough, hey, why not? That could be your position to keep. It's a bit like Archie Gray's been playing so well that if Ben Davies, let's say, comes back first, Archie Gray might keep his place. He probably needs a rest, but or he might play midfield. That'd be nice to see him where he's meant to play. That may be that Archie Gray keeps his place. And any new signing could have been told, hey, have a barnstormer of a month. You're playing for Tottenham Hotspur. It may be a bigger station than whatever club you've been at before. You've got a great chance of keeping your place. And if not, there's so many games coming up. You're going to get some game time because we need to rotate players, even though we've forgotten how to do that. And who knows next season who's going to leave in the summer and things like that. But as they're at this stage, I can imagine they're probably starting to think, well, is it worth it now? But the problem is inaction. It might be money saved, but the damage has already been done. We've seen that in the results. And how many times have we heard? I mean, Postecoglou's used it in the last week or so. The club is working hard, but it's not easy. I feel like I could hear that expression said in so many different accents. I'm sure I've heard it in an Argentinian accent. The Argentinian accent? Technically Spanish accent. I've heard it said in a Portuguese accent a couple of times. I heard it said in an Italian accent. Probably many other accents as well. You'll know who I'm talking about because it is an expression that we've just heard so many times by Spurs managers over the years. I mean, yes, we know the January window's not easy. Absolutely, it's not. But other clubs have been moving to try to fix problems in their squad. And if you've got a squad that is on its knees with about 13, 14 fit senior players, you should be setting up deals to go as soon as that window starts. If you have to pay over the odds for a player, so be it. It's just going to have to be the way because ultimately the damage that's being done on the league season could end up costing you probably that same amount of money, even if it's just in league places prize money at the end of the year, even if that's as basic as we're going. Hopefully it would be even more than that. There'd be something else to it. If they could end up, if they had a full squad going into the second leg against Liverpool in the Carabao Cup semi-final, they're going to stand a better chance of going through and potentially winning trophies, or a trophy in that case. But, Look, I'm not saying they're looking to save money. Maybe they are. But certainly inaction is just the worst action. Is inaction and action, you know what I mean. I mean, we've spoken about the centre-back. Also, centre-back that can play left-back. It is mad that Jed Spence is really their only... I say only proper left-back. Sergio Reguilon is there, of course. And he's not even a proper left-back, Jed Spence. He, of course, is a right-back playing left-back. But you know what? Jed Spence has been superb. He's been so good. He has been... I've got to admit, I like Jed Spence. I think he's a talented guy. I've been surprised still at the consistency of his performances in playing in positions that are not kind of comfortable for him playing as a left back. Sometimes at centre back, we've seen him a couple of times already, and I think his consistency has been remarkable. Yeah, he's had some tough moments. Yeah, Arsenal tried to close him down a lot, but I actually felt like on the whole he did pretty well, pretty good. And yeah, he's been terrific. But aside from that, the other left back, the actual only natural left back you've got fit right now is Sergio Reguilon, who shouldn't be at the club. In a normal transfer window, Spurs would be looking to offload him. Probably wouldn't go, you would think, because this summer he'll get a much better financial package from whatever club he then goes to, because he'll be a free agent. But still, it is mad that we're in this situation. And I mean, what did Ange say? That Doggy would be out for 6 weeks. When did he get injured? A couple of weeks ago. So you're looking maybe 3 weeks ago, was it? So maybe 3-4 weeks left. Yeah. So this it's just so dangerous. Such a risky policy it has been, just to rely on these players in an injury crisis to not get injured. Only Spurs would take that view. It's just mad. But yeah, so that's defensive wise. But we know that Postecoglou wanted an attacking player. He has said it enough times. You know, he needs help. When asked, do you mean players coming back or a new signing? Hopefully both. He said it enough times. Yes, they were interested. We've spoken about him before, and Randall Kolo Muani. But the PSG forward had decided to go to Juventus. You can understand it, to be fair. They've got Champions League football. They're a big club who are at the right end of the table, although I think they're about 5th right now. And he's probably looked at Spurs, who could be 14th by the end of today, after the matches tonight. I think United have got Southampton, so it's quite possible. He looks at them, and he's looked at everything going on there, and probably thought, he probably looked at it and thought, probably going to go there and get injured. So, yeah, I mean, but also, as is the way in scouting and all this, is, yeah, you might have a target as one of your main ones, but surely there's a list of ones that are equally as good that you go for next. You know, that was always the way. That's how scouting departments work. There is not just one that is the pinnacle, or the pinnacle achievable. Achievable pinnacle? Struggling today. It's my brain's still frazzled from having to watch that all last night. But yeah, players are starting to come back. I don't know why I just made a snake noise. But players are starting to come back. You got Richarlison, he came on last night. Mikey Moore's back now. We've seen him against Tamworth. But Postecoglou needed help sooner, and he hasn't had it. And the problem that you saw as a result of that last night, the players were kind of drained, and they were unable to do what Postecoglou football needs for it to do, and that is have the energy and the pressing and the striding out of defence, and also the mental. People kind of play this down. There's the physical side of things, but also there's a mental tiredness that can come into it. And when you're being asked to play fast passing football around a press, you need to be switched on and not knackered and make the right decisions with your passing. And yeah, that's just makes it all the more difficult for the Postecoglou system to work when he's just using the same players over and over and over again. And this was a performance against Arsenal last night. It lacked the energy, the fight, the bravery that they'd shown only 7 days earlier against Liverpool. You know, a lot of the stuff that was in that game was completely missing from this game. And it's a derby. They should be even more pumped up and ready to play. If anything, last night's performance felt more like a pre-Postecoglou one for me. They sat too deep, struggled to get out, messed around with their passing further up the pitch. They just didn't create enough at the other end of the pitch. Had a couple of first half chances, but second half was mostly just a couple of late ones, really, with Pedro Porro hitting the post. And the problem was the ball just didn't stick up front. That was one of the issues as well. Kulusevski, like I say, who's been brilliant. I'm loath to criticise him because he's built up so much credit this season, but dispossessed 4 times, 5 unsuccessful touches, and he just really was bouncing off Arsenal players. Normally it's the other way around. Other players are bouncing off him and he's striding through. Whereas last night I just felt he looked so off the pace and like I say, weak in his challenges. And it wasn't just him. Sonny had the ball taken away from him 3 times and had 2 touches that lost the ball. Solanke, normally the reliable hold-up man, not last night. 3 loose touches from him that saw the ball just go back to Arsenal. So if you're trying to play it out, and every time you're playing it to one of your front 3, that ball is just rebounding straight to an Arsenal person and the ball's coming back at you, you're just putting yourself under pressure. And look, Solanke could have got an early goal as well. I think it was Spence, I think if I remember correctly, got down the left-hand side, hit a lovely cross with the outside of his right foot. And Solanke kind of just needed to throw himself at it. And he just didn't quite do that. And that allowed Gabriel to get a terrific sliding challenge, get the ball away. But I think if Solanke throws himself at that, there's nothing the challenge really can do because one of them is going to knock that ball past David Raya. It wasn't great. But look, probably the most crucial moment on the pitch where the ball was given away did not come from one of those front 3 players. It came from Yves Bissouma. It was so poor. So Jed Spence, and it ended up being the winning goal that came from it. Jed Spence has the ball, being pressed by about 3 Arsenal players, knocks it out to Bissouma. Bissouma has no idea of what Arsenal players around him, turns back in field, runs straight into problems. Arsenal nick the ball, knock it up the pitch. It's knocked to Trossard. Trossard hits a bouncing shot that, unfortunately, Kinderski should have done better with. I think there's no getting away from it. Kind of gets his hand to it. The bounce was difficult, but he will be replaying that in his brain last night when he was lying in bed just thinking, I should have saved that. And yeah, look, Spurs had been dealt some misfortune as well. They'd opened the scoring. Decent goal. What was it? Corner, headed out. Sonny controls like a side-footed volley, and it hits, I think it hit Saliba and went through Partey's legs and then into the goal, bottom right corner. So, yeah, Spurs taken the lead, which was great, against the run of play, although they had just had that attack, I think, with Solanke just not long before. So they looked dangerous, or they're growing more dangerous. Score that. Always dangerous to do the shushing kind of celebration at the home fans, as it proved to be. I remember Eric Dyer did that as well a couple of years back at, I think that was the Emirates as well. And that all went horribly wrong as well. But yeah, and then, yeah, of course, dreadful moment by the officials. Trossard, ball clearly goes off him, goes out for a goal kick. They signal for a corner. To everyone's confusion and surprise, even Arsenal fans down there were probably like, what? And the ball swung in. It kind of was a combination of Gabriel and Dragishin that both got to it. The ball's headed against Solanke and it hits Solanke and goes into the net. Just mess all round from the officials and from Spurs. But this wasn't a game as frustrating as that was. And look, Spurs had benefited from poor officiating. We've spoken about that in recent weeks as well. This was not a game that I didn't feel was like dependent on that officiating. Postecoglou knew it as well. He said, look, it did come off Trossard. It did, but I don't want to talk about referees. I've got to take responsibility for my team, and I let the referees take responsibilities for theirs. It wasn't a corner. It's how things are going for us at the moment. But that side, we weren't anywhere near the level we needed to be in that first half in such a big game. We've got to understand that what we can control is the first thing we need to focus on. I'd asked him about the actual performance as a whole, and he said, not good enough, especially that first half. Way too passive, allowed Arsenal to take control of the game. Really disappointed with the way we, both with and without the ball, allowed them to dictate the tempo and paid a price for it. The second half was a little bit better, but nowhere near good enough. And he was quite proactive in taking off Sarr, who was really ineffective. He's going through a little dip at the moment, Sarr. Again, young player, this is what's going to happen. And sorry, I'm just seeing Man City plugging up some of the issues in their squad. I know they've got loads of money, but still a way of operating and getting things done quickly. So Sarr hasn't been great. He was taken off. And Bissouma, Sarr was on a yellow card, but Bissouma, there was no reason other than he just wasn't happy with him. And I kind of said, did you take them off to kind of get more control of the midfield again? And he said it wasn't about regaining control, it was having different intent in our football. It's not who we are. It's not the way I set the team up. It's not the way we want to play, to sit in there and allow Arsenal to play to their tempo. It just wasn't good enough. It wasn't. It was, like I said, that's the best way of describing it. I think it's a pre-Postecoglou performance. There was none of the bravery. There was none of the kind of movement. And look, I know people will say, oh, the trouble is if you lose the ball and your fullbacks are far up the pitch, it's going to be a nightmare. But the fullbacks weren't really that far up the pitch all the time. Porro was a couple of times. Spence a couple of times later on when they were trying to push to get something back. But ultimately, the bravery is as much about the movement of the other players as it is with the ball. Using the ball. The amount of times that Gray and Spence got penned in down the left-hand side by Arsenal players because they had no movement in front of them. There was whether that was Son or whether that was Bergvall in the first half or Maddison in the second, just having an outlet to be able to get the ball to. And yeah, it was just a collective thing. And Bergvall was superb. I'm going to talk about him in a moment, but I'm very aware that I keep saying that. Starting with the subs, only Richarlison really made any impact, I would say. And even then, it was a physical impact, but in terms of his quality, you could see he was rusty and hasn't played in a couple of months. But hopefully there was one moment, I was about to say hopefully he gets sharper. There was one moment when he kind of batted the ball out of Raya's hand with his hand and then went down looking like he was injured. I don't know if it was to stop himself getting a booking for whacking it with his hand. But my first thought was, not again. Please don't be the first time you've come back, you've got injured again. That would just be the most ridiculous thing ever. But no, he was the only one that made any real impact for me. I don't think Maddison did much when he came on, and Brennan Johnson was dreadful. He really was. He played into the narrative about him. Talking about him in the last game against Hamworth and how, yeah, he looked poor, but ultimately provided decisive moments, involved in the first goal, scored the third, set up Werner for a couple of chances as well. This game, no, just wasn't good enough. Quality wasn't good enough. Not enough intent. Tried to press a little bit. That's about it. That's the most I can give him. It was not a good performance from him. And just overall, I know he's a younger player, but including Maddison in this as well. It was another day in which the senior players for Spurs just kind of faded into the background. Son's goal aside, it's very difficult to pick out any of the senior players in that team yesterday and think, well, they stood up. They tried to make something happen. And like I say, Sonny's goal was probably the only moment where you saw that. And it's ridiculous that two 18-year-olds had to grab the game by the scruff of the neck. And also Jed Spence to a degree. I know he's 24, but a relative newcomer to this level of football. Archie Gray recovered the ball 5 times, made 7 clearances, 4 headed ones, as well as that. And despite the Arsenal press trying to pen him in there, 88% pass success rate with Jed Spence 87%. Contrast that with the other side of the defence, Radu Dragusin 77%, Pedro Porro 78%. So they were actually keeping the ball better than those players and their passes were finding their marks. If we're going to take one positive out of this defensive injury crisis, it's that Archie Gray has now played 25 games this season. And if it doesn't break him, it's going to make him stronger. I'm not sure that's entirely how the song goes. If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. But he is going to become a more well-rounded player at the end of this. That is one thing we can take out of this absolute mess that is going on at Spurs right now, is that Archie Gray, as long as nothing bad injury-wise happens to him, is going to come out of this such an experienced player beyond his years. And he's a fighter as well. There was one moment in the second half, when there was a little bit of concern from a referee because he must have got a whack Gray in an aerial challenge. And he kind of was holding his hair. The referee came over to him, and then Lucas Bergvall came over to him as well and to check on him. And he pushed Lucas Bergvall away, not in a mean way, but just as if to say, "I'm fine. Let's get on with this. Let's do this," kind of thing. I just would have loved to have seen that attitude from so many other players that we just didn't see yesterday. Talking to Lucas Bergvall, probably the best player of the day for me. I do think he was. First as a more advanced midfielder in the first half. Second half, he was playing the number 6 role. And it's a huge compliment to him that pre-game I kind of thought to myself, well, you're going to probably need Basuma in there as a defensive shield to help Spurs against, the Arsenal attack in midfield. I actually thought Spurs looked more solid and less kind of likely to let Arsenal through with an 18-year-old Swede in that role who is just proving to be so versatile now. He's as comfortable playing in that 6 role as he is as like a number 8. And like I said before, I've seen him as a 10 as well. And he made more defensive actions yesterday than anyone else on the pitch from either side. Lucas Bergwijn, he had 15 defensive actions, which included winning 4 of his 6 tackles, made 1 interception, recovered the ball twice, made 2 blocks, 5 clearances, and a headed clearance as well. He was constantly bailing out his teammates. There was one moment when Spence did get caught. He was trying to dribble out of a difficult situation with about 4 players around him, and he got caught. The ball went back in the box, and Bergwijn made a terrific block, I think it was, in the box. So he's just got this ability right now where he looks like he's found his engine, he's found his fitness, he's found what he needs to have fitness-wise to play in the Premier League level. So he is still striding up and down the pitch late in games, and that's a huge thing for him because I know when he arrived, that was nowhere near that. He had a lot of work to do. So he's worked incredibly hard on that. But also, he's very efficient with the ball. He's very quick and tries to play like progressive passes, but actually really efficient with the way he uses it as well. 93 pass success rate, with 3 passes into the final third as well. Just on that, Spence had 4 final third passes, and Archie Gray had 1 as well. It just shows you these 3 players, they're propping up the team yesterday. He really shouldn't be doing that. And like I said, I think the fact that 2 18-year-olds in particular had to take responsibility in a North London derby, it's such a bad look for the senior players. It really is such a bad look. And it's absolutely clear to me now, and I really hope it is to Postecoglou, that when the centre-backs return, that midfield in front of them should be containing Archie Gray and Lucas Bergwijn as much as possible. Don't knacker them out. Allow some rotation, but they should be starting together in the midfield. Because they're both versatile enough to switch positions of the 6 or the 8. They're going to be brilliant together. They've got fight, they've got battle, they've got tactical intelligence, they've got ability on the ball, the technical ability to do things. And you can see the other players respect them. They'll give them the ball as much as possible. They have earned the trust of those senior players who are the ones now looking to them to prop up the team. They're going to be superstars together. They really have. And they've earned their place in the team. It's not just because everyone, sometimes, and this happens a fair bit, and we all do it, myself included, but especially you see it on social media, young player A, young player C, they should be playing. I can't believe the manager is not playing them, despite the fact that we're not there in training, we're not getting to see how they're performing, and they may be miles off of it. They may be nowhere near being able to play at that level of football yet. Yet with Archie Gray and Lucas Bergwijn, the evidence is there every single week. These guys are terrific. And they're still learning. They're only going to get better and better and better. Get them in that midfield as soon as you can. Archie Gray. What a dream to have him playing as a central midfielder. It will be at some point. We'll get to see that. They've absolutely earned it. And I put to Postecoglou after the game that while it's difficult to take positives from a derby defeat, really difficult, could he take any from their displays, the 2 18-year-olds, amid a really difficult atmosphere as well? I was quite disappointed at that I was told by some of the people that cover Arsenal that the atmosphere at the Emirates has got a little bit wishy-washy, a bit bordering on and going to be toxic. Apparently against United it wasn't great, so I was thinking, okay, Spurs, can get ahead, maybe they can do something here in terms of quietening the place down. They did, and it did for a spell. And then, of course, we had that Trossard, a corner that never should have been. Or Trossard winning a corner that he shouldn't have won at all. And then the noise just went. And from that point on, the noise was loud. But, like I said, the 2 18-year-olds did very well in that. And again, is that because of the Galatasaray experience? We've spoken about that before. Because nothing's going to be worse for them than that noise. Maybe it did. Maybe it played its part. I think Postecoglou misheard me. And I think he thought I was saying, should they take positives from the game, as in Graham Bergvall themselves? So his reply was, I hope not. I want them disappointed. This can't be accepted by anyone at the club. Us losing so many games in the league season is not right. I know we're going through a tough trot and are asking big jobs, but I hope they're hurting the 18-year-olds as much as anybody else in terms of us not being able to deliver on a big night. I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are hurting. They kind of gave everything to it and would have been ultimately really disappointed by it all, but that wasn't quite what I was asking. So can he take anything from it? He was probably just not in the mood to praise anyone after a night like that. Talking to young players behind them, of course, we referred to him earlier. Antonin Kinski played his third game in English football for Tottenham Hotspur. Like I say, he would have played the Trossard goal over and over in his head. I actually thought, look, that's a key moment for goalkeepers, unfortunately. You make one mistake or you don't do something to the level that you know you can do, that defines your game. I actually thought he did pretty well apart from that. He was really strong from set pieces on the whole. Yeah, there was a couple potentially their equalising goal. Maybe he got himself boxed in a bit, but he actually was pretty dominant and proactive with set pieces. Made 4 punches from set pieces, which Spurs were constantly giving away. It was like, okay, lads, we're going to play the best team in the league at set pieces. What should we do? Oh, I know, commit as many fouls as possible around the our box and see if we can give them free kicks everywhere to pepper into our penalty area. But I actually thought he did pretty well on the whole with that. Made 3 saves as well. His distribution was good. I think he was probably getting a load of flack on TV from what I was saying from social media. 76% of his passes reached their target compared to David Raya's 61. 47% of Kinski's long kicks found their targets. Again, Raya's 39%. His passing was much better. The only moment, was a bit iffy. He'd kind of got himself in a little bit of trouble with Havertz slid in and he managed to get the ball at the second attempt, but it was a little bit of a nervy moment. But overall, I thought he was really good with his distribution. And tried to pick out players and the fullbacks, like clipping it over attackers, which he's very good at with either feet. And he was trying to find Solanke to mix it up a bit and going a little bit long. I felt like Spurs overplayed that too much. I felt Solanke was just constantly battling against Gabriel and Saliba, who are decent in the air, and it was a tough night for him. But yeah, I just feel like, as with Graham Bergvall and Spence as well, Kinski didn't hide from it. I felt like it was one he kind of rushed out and did quite well with his body to stop. I think it was Sterling. It was. I think he did okay, but unfortunately, it will be that moment that it will be the one that he'll remember the game for. But he's going to learn from it. It'll make him stronger. It will. To have your first 3 games to be a cup semi-final against Liverpool in front of 62,000 people, then going to a non-league side with a brutal long ball thrown at you all the time and constantly having to deal with that physical thing, and then going to a North London derby away from home amid the noise against a team that is so good at set pieces. It's really been a baptism of fire. Nothing should really be as difficult as what he's already faced in his first 3 games. And overall, he's come out the other end. And I think he's a terrific young keeper. Yeah, that's it really. I was trying to think of that's it really. He's done very well so far, and he'll only get better and better. And as said before, don't forget, before these 3 games, he hadn't played in a month. Czech League stopped for the winter. He had not been playing, I think, mid-December it was. So, it's been a while. And he's going to shake off this rust, and he's just going to keep getting better and better. And like I said, it's very exciting to have these young players, but they need to have senior players alongside them, helping them, nurture them and everything. And because Postecoglou, look, he needs results to turn. Absolutely he does from this weekend onwards. Otherwise, the context, the injuries, the young signings, the lack of backing in the transfer window, whatever, people are just not going to look at that because they're going to look at the results and they're going to look at tired performances that don't bring wins. And ultimately, this is what happens in football. Everything that happens behind it is kind of goes into the background, And ultimately, it's about what's on that piece of paper or your phone or the scoreboard, that result. And if the results are not good, and they really are dreadful at the moment, they are, especially in the Premier League. Spurs have won just one of their past 9 Premier League matches. It's not good enough. They've lost 6 of them. Only Leicester and Southampton have earned fewer points than the 5 points Spurs have got during this run of 9 matches. They've lost 11 games in total in the league, which is a joint most at this stage in a Premier League season, tying with the 97-98 season, 2003-04 season, and 2008-09 season. We were saying this today. How long ago does it feel like when Spurs went on that run? Was it 7 wins in a row? Something like they'd won 9 or 10 out of 12 games or something like that. It just feels like a lifetime. It feels like a different season. And they need to win matches they're leading in. That is another massive Achilles heel right now. They've thrown away 18 points from leading positions in the Premier League this season. Only Fulham have lost more points of 9 teams from being in leading positions. And this Sunday brings the trip to Goodison Park, the last one, because obviously they're moving into their new home. It's one of these ones where, on paper, for any other club would have thinking, yay, look who we're facing, because Everton have only won once since mid-October in the Premier League. And it's going to take them a bit of time under David Moyes. You know, he's come in, but he's got a bit of a Spurs situation in that they're playing every 3 days and he's not really getting a chance to get his methods across as well as he probably wants to. And he also wants new signings to come in as well. But Dr. Tottenham is arriving. And this is the thing. Well, in the past, Dr. Tottenham would have arrived, and hopefully that's not the case this weekend. But Spurs need to win. They need to lift their morale. And it's not a place they've won a lot recently. There's kind of been a lot of draws there. They've been at home, they've been fine against Everton, but away at Goodison Park, just been draws galore. That was the one where Richarlison scored a couple last season, wasn't he? And he is back, but they're going to have to come up with a win. They're just going to have to dig it out. However deep they have to dig, they need to find it. Postecoglou said yesterday, you've got no choice. There's no magic cure. You've got to get up tomorrow, work hard, and go into Sunday and prepare to go into battle and turn around our fortunes and our season. There's nothing magical that's going to change it. There's always reasons for all these things to happen, but the reality is that our results and our form in the league has been nowhere near good enough, and that needs to change. Like I said, they need to go to Goodison Park. They need to turn around their fortunes, because I've kind of got this feeling, and I could be completely wrong, but I feel like if they can go and win on Sunday, I think they win 4 in a row at least, because I feel like winning there gets you momentum. Then you go and play Hoffenheim away, who are in a difficult period. They've only won, I think, 5 games all season in all competitions, something like that. I think it was Kramrich has done an interview this week that's gone viral, essentially saying that he couldn't say what he wants about the club because he would have the biggest fine in Bundesliga history. They're a complete mess. Again, I know what you're saying. Dr. Tottenham's here. Hopefully not. But then there's that. Then there's Leicester at home. I know it's on paper, but you should be winning that game at home. Then you've got Elfsborg at home. Elfsborg at home in the Europa League as well. So for me, get past Everton. If you could beat them on Sunday, that's a run of 4. And you win all 4 of those, there's a momentum shift. Suddenly everything feels that little bit better. And you're going into the games at Brentford and Liverpool in the second leg. Probably got players coming back as well. You've got Richarlison hopefully in a better fit state to be able to start games as well. Maybe he starts at Hoffenheim. Maybe he'll be in a position to do that. I know they're going to be very cautious with him, but perhaps. They need that momentum shift. They do, because, like I say, if they win, then the tide will turn. If they lose, I think the knives are going to continue to come out for Postecoglou, regardless of the mess he's trying to operate in and the backing he's currently got from the club in terms of backing with his job. Maybe not so much backing with the transfers. Who knows? Maybe in the next couple of days, something will happen. There'll be a reaction to this, and there shouldn't need to be a reaction to this to make it happen, but maybe Spurs will get their backside into gear and we'll see actually some support in a transfer sense for him, because it needs to happen. But he needs help. Will it ever arrive? That is the question. And that is a question that only Tottenham and those at the top of the club can answer. Because, yeah, I know people will lay a lot of blame at Ange's door as well. And the results, allow that to be an absolutely fine view. Why not? The results are horrendous. And I've said it before. Managers with far grander CVs and being in league positions far higher than Spurs are right now have lost their jobs. And Postecoglou's had placed more trust placed in him as a long-term project than those managers. Poch got turfed out, and he had all those years in the bank where he'd done wonders with that club. So yeah, I get it. I absolutely get it. But I also still retain my belief that if he can get his players back, and his style of football is firmly imprinted on them because he's got the right players doing it and they're not knackered, I think Spurs start sweeping up the table. I do. And I think that it all leads to something pretty cool. I mean, you wouldn't put it past Spurs to have an absolutely disastrous Premier League season and yet still win a trophy or even two. And then we're like, oh, we've got what we always wanted. But they were rubbish in the Premier League. It's a question for you. Would you take that? Would you take a Carabao Cup win and finishing mid-table or lower? And would you take a Europa League win and that same league position? The Europa League would be even better because obviously you're going to get Champions League qualification, although Spurs would need a massive upgrade clearly to be able to compete in that competition the next season. But a lot of work needs to be done on and off the pitch. And when I said, by the way, I forgot to clarify this earlier on, when we're talking about the structure around him, I presume, this is only me presuming, I presume that's maybe more things like medical, sports science, allowing him not to get in this situation again where, they're losing so many players. Certainly structure needs to include transfers, but I wonder if that's what that means. I don't know. It's just what I'm kind of hearing about stuff and the situation with him. But look, if they're building around him, that's a good sign at the moment for him anyway, and hopefully for the team in the long run. So there you go. Yeah, that was a frustrating one. I hope I've got such a better video to talk through on Monday. I really hope I do after Sunday's match. What else was I going to talk about before I left? Marathon stuff. I always get people asking me about how I'm getting on. Brilliant moment this morning when we passed the £19,000 mark money raised for Cancer Research UK, which is incredible. I'm so grateful, and it's just amazing. Some very kind chap named Timothy donated £317. I think it was this morning or last night. I think it was this morning. To take it over the 19,000, which is incredibly generous. And some people have been doing those kind of big donations and so many like much smaller ones that everyone is appreciated because all of them like just mass together and create. We've had 1,008 people have donated. It's just so cool. And it is genuinely keeping me going right now. I am firmly a member of the Tottenham injury curse right now. I am just sitting here. There are parts of my body that are aching, muscles that are absolutely killing me, sitting here doing this video. I did another 15-mile run yesterday, painfully slow. My runs are getting slower and slower at the moment. I've got this really good pace going, and now I've had to get slower and slower because I'm just trying to be so careful. I've got so many injuries going on right now. I've got a hamstring issue at the back of my left leg, which is quite high up the back of my hamstring. I've got, that's kind of causing some back pain, which I think is sciatica perhaps. I've got a hip. I feel so old. I'm getting hip problems. I've got a groin problem as well, all in the same left leg. I think it's because I'm trying to, when they say players, when they come back from an injury, they're a little bit wary of that area. So maybe their body takes more load in other muscles. I think that's what I'm doing. I think I'm trying to be careful about the hamstring. And then, I started with a groin injury. I think I was trying to avoid stretching and hurting my groin, and I think I ended up with hurting my hamstring instead, and that's now spreading everywhere. I've got a physio appointment on Monday with a former Premier League physio, which I'm hoping he can just produce some magic and make me not hurt. Would be a nice start, because even just starting the run is a pain. And the trouble is, I'm at the stage now where I can't really rest up, because it's not that long away, April the 27th. It's really not that long now. I'm in the kind of the stretch of about 15 weeks or so. Yeah, I'm probably not going to push the runs much higher at the moment in terms of distance but yeah. Anyway, you don't need to know all about it. You've got enough injury concerns to worry about with Spurs without me. But yeah, the reason I'm saying that is seeing the donations fly up and how many people have donated, how much we've raised. It just keeps me going. Every time I'm sore and aching, I look at the total. I genuinely do, and I'm like, I've got to do this. I've got to get out there. I've got to go out in the rain and snow and ice and winds and horrible weather and do this. And yeah, I will, as I occasionally do. I'll pop the link underneath the video. Anyone that does want to contribute that hasn't already, it's just greatly appreciated. And yeah, so that's that. Hopefully I have success with that, but hopefully Tottenham have even more success in the weeks ahead, starting with Sunday. Got a Postecoglou press conference tomorrow ahead of that. I'm sure there'll be plenty of questioning on that. I want to ask about various things. Just try and see if there is frustration at transfers. I know he's been very kind of... it's difficult because obviously, you know, he wants to keep in the club's good books as well with his job, but he's also a very ambitious guy, and he must know how compromised his work has been in this last month or so without getting help, or 16 days or so. But yeah, so press conference tomorrow, trip to Goodison Park. On Saturday, I'm going to try and just stay away from all forms of football, I think. I might have to do a run, even that. I might even take a day off on that. And then Sunday, heading up to Goodison Park. It's going to be difficult for people. I know that. It's I think it's another strike day on the trains. I've got one that gets me there a little bit closer to kick-off than I would have liked. Not quite as bad as the Tamworth scenario at the moment. And I'm pretty much having to get the last train back, which scares the life out of me in case that gets cancelled. Because, yeah, alternate arrangements and a very unhappy Mrs. Gold are going to occur if that's the case. But, yeah, hey, hopefully something positive to look forward to. A derby defeat, never enjoyable, even if it's too frequent at the Emirates. Still very frustrating. But it's on the club now. They're backing Ange Postecoglou. They've got to back him in the transfer market as well, and they've got to get something done as quickly as possible to help him out. It will only benefit the team going forward this season as well. I don't like the view of, we'll have suddenly too many players. Spurs will have more injuries. They will have more players that will get re-injured, unfortunately. It just seems to be the way this season. So you need bodies in there. And I know they've got to fit the way he plays, but come on, you must have lists of them that you've now identified that can fit the Postecoglou way. So they've got to get it done. So there you go. Right, on that note, time to head off. And as always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.